Good evening in Chag Sameach. It's Wednesday, October 15th. I'm Aria O'Sullivan, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. An Israeli hiker was among 17 people killed by unseasonal blizzard in Nepal. The tail end of Cyclone Hudhud triggered the storm that caused the death of 8 foreign hikers and a group of local yak herders. The incidents come during the peak trekking season in Nepal, home of 8 of the world's 14 highest mountain peaks, including Mount Everest. For the past few days, Nepal has been lashed by heavy rains and blizzards at high altitude. The body of the Israeli hiker and 2 Polish nationals were found in the Thorang La area along the popular trekking route near Anabapu, the world's 10th highest mountain. 4 other Israeli trekkers who were trapped by snowfall were rescued early this morning. There were clashes today on the Temple Mount as Muslim rioters attempted to attack Jews who had come there in honor of Hoshana Rabbah, the final day of the Sukkot holiday. Police intervened and closed off the mountain to visitors. Hundreds of police fanned out in the Old City to provide security for thousands of Jews who went to the Western Wall for the Beating of the Willows ceremony. 3 policemen were lightly hurt when Muslims hurled stones at them. 4 rioters were arrested during clashes near the Lions Gate. They were among hundreds of Arabs, including Knesset members, who protested against the police decision to limit the age of Muslim worshippers entering Al-Aqsa Mosque to those over 50. They held signs reading, "Al-Aqsa belongs to us and not the Jews." Clashes also spread to other parts of the Old City, with masked Palestinians hurling stones and firecrackers at police. 3 police were lightly wounded in the attacks. This morning, thousands of Jewish worshippers headed out into the pre-dawn cold to celebrate Hoshana Rabbah at the Western Wall. Hoshana Rabbah is considered to be the last day of the effects one standing before God in the new year of the Jewish calendar. There are unique traditions in the morning prayer service as 7 Torah scrolls are placed in a central podium and worshippers march around them 7 times while holding the lulav branches. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon was giving a tour yesterday of the Israeli communities along the border with Gaza, which suffered constant bombardments during the summer's 50-day war with Hamas. Ban was accompanied by IDF Major General Noam Tivon and other senior officers and officials on a tour of the Hamas terror tunnel uncovered by the IDF that led from the Gaza Strip into the southern part of Israel near Kibbutz En HaShlosha. While in the south, Ban met with residents of Kibbutz Nirim, including the family of 4-year-old Daniel Tangerman, who was killed in an August 22nd mortar attack by Hamas on Kibbutz Nachal Oz. Ban told reporters afterwards that he was shocked by the tunnels used for the infiltration of terrorists.
I have been repeatedly saying that rocket attacks killing civilian populations is not acceptable, should be condemned. Nobody should live under constant threat or fear by this rocket and penetrating, alarming underground tunnels.
Hamas was angered by Ban's visit to the Israeli border. They accused the UN Secretary General of hypocrisy and double standards, saying that Israel's arsenal and nuclear reactor are far more dangerous than the tunnel Ban was talking about. Ban Ki-moon later visited Gaza yesterday for the first time since the war, calling the situation beyond description and urging a speedy reconstruction effort. Ban visited a United Nations Relief and Works Agency school, where he met with families taking shelter in the school, and was driven through the Jabalia refugee camp, the scenes of some of the heaviest Israeli shelling this summer. Ban also visited a number of other sites, including the seashore, where he spoke with a number of Gazan fishermen. Ban said the damage was far worse than what he had seen after the Operation Cast Lead that took place in late 2008. And he said he is considering establishing his own board of inquiry to investigate the shelling of the UN facilities and the killing of UN staff.
The enormous destruction in Gaza is a source of pain to me personally, and it's a shame to the international community. There should be an accountability. I have repeated my call for accountability. Whoever has committed the violations of international humanitarian law should be investigated and brought to justice.
Ban also announced that Israel was permitting the first truckload of construction materials to enter the Gaza enclave, which has been blocked by Israel and Egypt since before the conflict.
I'm pleased to announce that the first truck bringing cement and other construction material has arrived.
Israel said it was allowing in 600 tons of cement, 50 truckloads of gravel, and 10 truckloads of steel into Gaza for rebuilding homes and public buildings. The shipments were to be monitored by the UN and the Palestinian Authority. Palestinians said at least 200 tons of cement had already reached Gaza through the Kerem Shalom crossing with Israel. At a conference in Cairo on Sunday, international donors pledged more than $5.4 billion for Gaza's reconstruction. This is the first time such goods have entered Gaza since the end of the recent round of hostilities. Ban said that rebuilding Gaza is not enough to change the Strip's difficult reality and called on Israel to allow the orderly entry and exit of people and goods to and from the Strip to encourage economic growth that would change dynamics of the ground and ultimately enhance the stability in Gaza, which in turn will improve Israel's security. Ban arrived in Israel on Monday to discuss the reconstruction with senior Israeli government officials. A rally called for in Tel Aviv last night to encourage Israelis to emigrate to Berlin fizzled out. Only a few dozen people showed up at the site, ironically next to a Holocaust memorial. Organizers say that the high cost of living here has prompted them to plan to leave Israel, preferring to live abroad in cities like Berlin, Germany, where life is cheaper. Organizers expected over 2,000 people and promised booths with information about moving to Germany, but none of these materialized, and only a few dozen people were found milling about, engaged in Israel's favorite pastime, complaining. In Beersheba, folks in dire straits held a protest calling for more public housing projects for those who can't afford to purchase apartments in the country. These people say they are not thinking of immigrating to Berlin. Most of them have never even been abroad before and cannot afford the plane ticket. They're asking for the government to implement a plan to build 1,000 public housing units. Daphne Leaf, one of the organizers of the 2011 social protest, says that people have despaired and the social problems have only exacerbated them. However, the Central Bureau of Statistics has released data that says that the immigration rates in 2012, the last year for which figures are available, was the lowest since the founding of the state, which means few Israelis really want to move abroad. They just want cheaper housing and lower prices here. Islamic extremists struck in Cairo, setting off a bomb near the Supreme Court that injured 12 people. There was no claim of responsibility for the attack, which damaged cars and storefronts in the Egyptian capital. The timing of the blast came as Egypt sentenced 7 Islamic terrorists to death in connection with the killing of Egyptian soldiers in Sinai and elsewhere. The nuclear deadline for reaching an agreement between Iran and the world powers must be delayed once again. That is the word from Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov ahead of today's meeting in Vienna between Iran and the G5+1. Currently, a deadline for reaching an agreement has been set for November 24th. The talks are centered on curbing Iran's atomic activities in exchange for lifting of economic sanctions. Western officials confirmed that with only 6 weeks to go before the target deadline, there are still significant differences between the sides, especially over the future scope of Iran's uranium enrichment production.
The idea is just to try and work as hard as we can and try and see where we stand in the negotiations. We said after New York that there were still significant gaps, and obviously with the deadline of November the 24th coming up, we would like to work as hard as we can and try and make some progress. But I can't predict at this point what's going to happen for the next couple of days. We'll see when the talks are finished.
Saying that they will fight to the death, Kurdish militiamen aided by coalition airstrikes continue to hold their ground in the besieged Syrian city of Kobani on the Turkish border. U.S.-led forces carried out 21 airstrikes in and around Kobani in a coordinated effort to prevent the city from falling to Islamic State fighters. Crowds gathered on the Turkish side of the border to watch the allies pound away at ISIS positions. But the Turkish military still refuses to get involved as Ankara refuses to attack Islamic State positions just across the border. On the other hand, Turkey did target Kurdish rebel positions inside their borders. According to the Kurds, Turkey launched a major airstrike against the PKK for the first time in 2 years. The attack follows a week of violent clashes in Turkey brought on by the ISIS advance on Kobani and the resulting flood of Kurdish refugees into Turkey. Kurdish civilians repeatedly clash with Turkish security forces, who they accuse of standing by idly while Kurds are being slaughtered just across the border. Islamic State struck in Baghdad with deadly force as a suicide car bomb killed at least 25 people in the Iraqi capital. A parliament member was among the victims of the third blast. It's the third in 3 days, targeting Shiite neighborhoods. The car bomber exploded his vehicle as cars lined up to enter an area that houses one of Shiites' holiest shrines called Imam Qadim. 5 police officers were among the dead. Coalition defense chiefs from 20 countries gathered in Andrews Air Force Base outside of Washington to discuss the war against ISIS in Iraq and Syria. U.S. President Barack Obama addressed the gathering and emphasized that the defeat of Islamic State will require a long-term effort.
At this stage, some 60 nations are contributing to this coalition, including more than 20 coalition members who are represented here today. Among them, Iraq, Arab nations, Turkey, NATO allies, and partners from around the world. So this is an operation that involves the world against ISIL. So far, we've seen some important successes. Stopping ISIL's advance on Erbil, saving many civilians from a massacre on Mount Sinjar, retaking the Mosul Dam, destroying ISIL targets and fighters across Iraq and Syria. Obviously, at this point, we're also focused on the fighting that is taking place in Iraq's Anbar province, and we're deeply concerned about the situation in and around the Syrian town of Kobani, which underscores the threat that ISIL poses in both Iraq and Syria. And coalition airstrikes will continue in both these areas.
Russia will cooperate with the coalition against ISIS. That's the word from U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry after meeting in Paris with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov.
We both recognize the need to destroy and ultimately defeat ISIL, to degrade their efforts and ultimately to defeat them, and also to counter the violent and oppressive approach of ISIL. In our discussions today, I suggested to Foreign Minister Lavrov that we intensify intelligence cooperation with respect to ISIL and other counterterrorism challenges of the region, and we agreed to do so.
Former U.S. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta says that the coalition coming together to fight ISIS must understand that this is a war and must be fought as such. Panetta also told CNN that Congress has given Obama such a hard time on foreign policy that the president has in effect given up.
In confronting a Congress that has been very difficult and finding it difficult to try to get some things accomplished, that it has discouraged him in terms of the ability to really make change. And I think he wanted to make change. He wanted to obviously make a difference in this country. And he's finding it exceedingly difficult to be able to deliver on that. And so the question now is, as a result of, the barriers he's run into, does he get back in the ring and really fight to try to get some things done? Or does he kind of stand back and kind of give up? And I think General Dempsey is the one who kind of pulled this together with all the defense chiefs. And I'm really pleased that this coalition is coming together. I think it's really important to get all of the defense chiefs of these various countries to commit to the war that we are now engaged in against ISIS. And that, I think we all have to remember, this is a war against ISIS. This is not just a kind of temporary police action. We are engaged in a war against ISIS.
For the first time in its history, the Israeli army is preparing to send volunteer enlistment notices to Israel's Christian Arab citizens as they turn 18. The turnabout is due to the efforts of the Israel Christian Recruitment Alliance that has been lobbying for the government to draft Christian Arabs. We get more in this report from Israel up close.
Aaron Sharbi is the new face of the Israeli army. The 28-year-old lawyer might not look like the average young soldier, and she might not have the job of an ordinary soldier, but she's an integral part of Israel's defense forces.
I always wanted to join the army. It looked very interesting. I didn't know anything before that about the army, but when I graduated high school, I wanted to join.
Unlike the Jewish majority population, Aaron's army service was not a given. That's because Aaron is a Christian Arab from Nazareth. Traditionally, Arab Israelis do not serve in the army because it's considered a conflict of interest. But that's starting to change.
I can tell you that most of our Christian population in Iraq, in Syria, in Lebanon, in Egypt are being massacred, slaughtered, and the world is still silent. So I believe that we live in Israel, peace and security, and we should defend this country at the same time.
20 years ago, Aaron's story would be exceptional. Now she's the front runner of a historical change in Israeli society. But that doesn't mean joining the army was easy. Aaron faced opposition from her friends and some of her family when she told them that she was going to be a prosecutor in a military court defending the Israeli state against terror plots.
At first, it was really hard. Many people didn't like me joining the army, and they were against it. But today, I know how to deal with it. I'm confident at what I do, and I don't regret anything.
And the numbers are on Aaron's side. Since she joined up 3 years ago, Christian recruits have tripled. Shadi Halul was one of the first Christians to serve as a paratrooper. Now he's head of a forum that provides support for young Christians who want to join the army. He believes that more Christians are signing up than ever before because they understand that Israel is the only country in the Middle East that will protect their religious and political freedoms.
Well, I feel that the majority of Christians want to integrate in the Israeli society and be part of this country. They now see the truth. What is this country, how valuable it is for them. They can see the difference from other Arab countries that they claim we are brothers and they kill the Christians first.
As Israel's Arab neighbors try to survive the brutal fallout of the Arab Spring, Israel's Christian citizens are standing up to defend the only country in the Middle East that guarantees their rights. This is Rebecca Gregg reporting for Israel Up Close.
A love affair is underway, and it's between Israel and the Philippines. That's the view of two Filipino filmmakers who have set out to express and spread that love and appreciation, which dates back for decades. We get more in this report also from Israel Up Close.
With global communication stronger than ever, Philippine media content providers are using the platform to spread their deep love and appreciation of Israel. Tech Concepcion produces 2 TV shows for ABS-CBN. With over 2 million subscribers worldwide, the network is the largest in the Philippines today.
The World Without Walls, that's the English show. I air different countries with diplomatic relationship with the Philippines. But here's the big thing. The purpose really of World Without Walls is to feature Israel. Israel is a special country, a special nation with its own story. There's a verse in the Bible that says, "Comfort ye, my people." One little way of comforting Israel is letting the world know the many countless contributions of Israel to the world.
Nana Banino is the senior feature writer for the Christian Broadcasting Network Asia.
There are many networks that say the wrong things about Israel. It's not accurate. So we want to balance it. We want to be fair to Israel. And we want the Filipinos to see this wonderful land, this beautiful nation, and these beautiful people for who they are.
Nana and Tech are currently in Israel making a film about Jewish Holocaust survivors who received refuge in the Philippines.
When all the countries closed its doors, a tiny nation in the Far East had the guts and the boldness, the courage to open its doors to the nation. The president then was President Manuel L. Quezon. His reason? Because it's the right thing to do.
Our President Manuel Quezon declared, and it's in the headline of our newspapers, that the Philippines will accept up to 10,000 Jewish refugees.
During World War II, the Philippines rallied against Hitler and the inhumanity of the Nazi regime. In 1947, the Philippines made a stand once again as the only Asian nation who voted in support of a state of Israel at the United Nations. The Open Door Monument was erected in the Israeli town of Rishon LeZion to honor the solidarity and bravery shown by the Philippine nation. The long-spanning diplomatic bond between the two nations has seen a helping hand extended both ways. Israel educated the Philippines with a hydroponic system, enabling them to grow rice in the desert. In 2013, after devastating Typhoon Haiyan hit the Philippines, Israel immediately sent a flying hospital and 4 disaster relief teams.
The very first to fly in to help us were the Jewish people, was Israel.
Israel continues to aid the Philippines in rebuilding what was destroyed. It seems that the two little countries, both the first democracies in their region, have a deep and lasting connection.
Philippines and Israel, the bond, are here to stay.
This is Ayelet Saban reporting for Israel Up Close.
In Tel Aviv, a sudden heavy thunderstorm put a damper on a major crosstown bike ride scheduled for this morning. Some 20,000 bikers and rollerbladers were expected to participate in the event, which shut down major streets across the city. But the rain, together with a burst of water main on Allenby Street, caused dangerous conditions And the Tel Aviv-Jaffa municipality called off the event out of a concern that bikers could be hurt in the slippery conditions. Dozens of bikers reportedly fell, and Magen David Adom ambulances transferred at least 6 bikers to hospitals with injuries. In financial news, it wasn't a good day for the shekel as it fell in strength against all major foreign currencies. The Tel Aviv Stock Exchange was shut for the holiday, but here's a look at the late afternoon numbers. The rain that began in the north of the country overnight moved down to the center, accompanied by lightning and thunder. 9 millimeters of rain fell in Tel Aviv, with 11 millimeters in Safed and 20 in Ma'alot. Temperatures around the country were colder than usual for this time of the year. Further rain is possible tomorrow, but it's unlikely to last. Here's a look at the expected highs and lows at home and abroad for the next 24 hours. Well, that's all for this newscast. Please join us again tomorrow, same time, at 10 minutes after 5, when I'll be here to bring you the latest news from Israel and abroad. Until then, I'm Aryeh O'Sullivan wishing you a Chag Sameach and Shalom from Jerusalem.